My in-laws thought I was divorcing my wife because she gained weight. The truth was she cheated, and now everyone hates her. When I look back at my late 20s, I remember feeling like I had finally hit the jackpot in life. I was 28, she was 27, and from the moment we met, it felt like every puzzle piece just clicked. We shared the same humor, the same dreams, and the same vision of a future together. I wasn't just in love, I was certain. She wasn't just the woman I wanted to marry. She was the person I wanted to build my entire life around. Our wedding day was everything we had hoped for. Small, intimate, and filled with the kind of laughter you can't fake. I remember watching her walk down the aisle, thinking, I'm the luckiest man alive. She had this glow, not just physical beauty, but the confidence, the way she carried herself, the way she looked at me like I was her safe place. Life was good. We were both working stable jobs, spending weekends cooking together, or going on spontaneous road trips. We'd stay up until 2 a.m. talking about everything and nothing. She was my best friend and my partner in every sense. When she got pregnant a few years later, it felt like our love had leveled up. We were about to become parents, something we had talked about since before we even got married. I remember holding her hand during those first ultrasound appointments, watching the screen, and realizing this is our baby. Pregnancy changed things, as it does for any couple, but for me, it was all positive. She gained weight, sure, but it didn't bother me. In fact, I still thought she was absolutely beautiful. I told her that all the time. Her hair seemed thicker, her cheeks rounder, and she had that warm, maternal glow that made me fall for her all over again. But somewhere along the way, she stopped believing me. I'd tell her she looked gorgeous, and she'd just shake her head or give me this half smile that didn't reach her eyes. She'd joke about looking like a whale, or never fitting into her old jeans again, but I could tell those jokes came from a place of pain. After our child was born, her weight didn't go back to where it had been, and she began to pull away from certain things. She'd avoid mirrors, refuse to be in photos, and always choose baggy clothes, even when we were going somewhere nice. I'd still tell her she was beautiful, not just out of habit, but because I truly meant it. But I could see those words bouncing off her like they never even landed. It wasn't just about the weight, it was about how she felt about herself. And no matter how much I tried to lift her up, she seemed to sink deeper into this self-conscious bubble. I didn't mind the changes in her body. Love had nothing to do with the dress size, but I could tell she didn't see it that way. The thing is, when you love someone, you see them as a whole person. I didn't just love the way she looked. I loved her laugh, the way she bit her lip when she was deep in thought, the way she always ordered dessert to share, but ended up eating most of it. I loved that she knew all my quirks and still wanted to be with me. But slowly, that woman, the confident, happy version of her, started to fade. And I didn't know how to stop it. I tried planning little date nights, writing her notes, even booking a weekend getaway, just the two of us, hoping to bring back that spark. But nothing seemed to work. I didn't realize it then, but those cracks in her self-esteem, they were the beginning of something that would eventually break us apart. And I wish I could say that's the only thing that changed. But I'd soon learn that her feelings about herself, and my inability to fix them, would lead to a choice she made that I never saw coming. After our child was born, life shifted into that chaotic rhythm all new parents know too well. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, and the constant juggling act between work and home. But beneath all of that, there was this subtle change between us. It wasn't overnight, and it wasn't dramatic at first. It was more like a slow drift. She became quieter. We used to talk about everything, the plot twist in a TV show, her annoying coworker, even silly what-if scenarios. But now, conversations were shorter, mostly about parenting logistics. Did you pack the diaper bag? Can you pick up formula on your way home? I tried to chalk it up to exhaustion. We were both tired, but deep down, I felt something was off. She started going to bed earlier, often before me. She stopped reaching for my hand when we were out in public. Intimacy became rare, and when it did happen, it felt different, like she wasn't really there with me. I told myself not to overthink it. I'd heard plenty of stories about couples struggling to reconnect after having kids. I figured it was just a phase, that we'd find our way back to each other. But months turned into years, and that distance didn't close. If anything, it grew. She stopped dressing up for date nights, even when I planned them. She'd decline with a tired smile, saying she didn't feel like going out. Sometimes, I'd catch her staring at herself in the mirror with this look of disgust. And it broke me because I couldn't understand how she could hate the person I loved most in the world. Then one night, about a year ago, she sat me down at the kitchen table after we'd put our child to bed. I could tell from her expression that this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "I need to tell you something," she began. Her voice cracked, and my stomach dropped. She told me she had been with someone else. At first, my brain refused to process the words. I thought maybe she meant she'd been texting someone or had some kind of emotional crush. But no, she meant exactly what it sounded like. She said she'd been feeling so low about herself, so unattractive, that she wanted to see if men who didn't have to love her would find her sexy. She said she knew I loved her, but in her mind, it didn't count because I was obligated. We were married, we had a child, and I was supposed to say she was beautiful. But if a stranger, someone with no reason to lie, found her desirable, maybe that would mean she wasn't as ugly as she felt. I sat there, numb, listening to the woman I'd spent nearly a decade building a life with explain why she had crossed that line. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just confessed like it was something she had to get off her chest. I asked her if she loved the other man. She said no. It wasn't about love. It was about validation. And that hurt even more, because it wasn't just betrayal. It was the realization that no matter how much I loved her, no matter how many times I told her she was beautiful, my words would never be enough to fill the void she felt inside. I wanted to be angry, to yell, to demand every detail. But all I felt was this deep, crushing sadness. We had a child. We had a history. And now we had this. She said it only happened once, but whether that was true or not, I didn't know if it mattered. The trust had been broken. In that moment, I knew our marriage was over. Not because she wasn't thin anymore, not because of her body, but because something inside her had shifted so far away from me that she'd gone to someone else for what I'd been trying to give her all along. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded, stood up from the table, and went to bed alone. I thought the worst part was over, but I was wrong. The hardest part was still to come, and it wouldn't come from her. It would come from her family. After that night, everything between us became strangely calm. Not warm, not repaired, just calm. Like two people quietly packing up their belongings in a room they both know they're about to leave. We agreed we'd get a divorce, and we'd keep it civil for the sake of our child. No screaming matches, no dragging each other through the mud. For a while, I thought maybe we could actually pull it off, an amicable divorce. But I underestimated one thing, her family. It started with a phone call from her mother. She didn't ease into it, didn't ask how I was doing. She went straight for the throat. "I can't believe you're doing this to her," she snapped. "Leaving her because she gained weight? After everything she went through bringing your child into this world." I froze. "That's not what this is about," I said carefully. But she wasn't listening. She went on about how shallow men ruin good women, how pregnancy changes bodies, how I was supposed to be a real man and stand by my wife no matter what. It wasn't just her mother, either. Her father called me the next day, his tone colder but no less judgmental. And then came the texts from her siblings, some passive-aggressive, others downright hostile. Apparently, my soon-to-be ex-wife hadn't told them the real reason for our divorce. She'd let them believe I was leaving because she was plus-size now, and they ran with that story. The thing is, I didn't want to humiliate her. I didn't want her parents to look at her differently, or for her siblings to lose respect for her. That's why I kept my mouth shut at first. I figured I could handle being the bad guy for a little while if it meant protecting her. But they didn't let up. Every time I dropped our child off at her parents' house, there'd be side comments. "Oh, guess some men just can't handle a real woman. You'll regret this when you realize no one else will put up with you." Sometimes they'd mutter it under their breath. Sometimes they'd say it loud enough to make sure I heard. And I did hear, over and over. Weeks turned into months, and my patience wore thinner and thinner. I was getting angry, not just because they were wrong, but because they were attacking my character, painting me as someone I wasn't. I had been faithful. I had loved her at every size. And yet, I was being crucified for a crime I didn't commit. The breaking point came during a Sunday dinner at her parents' place. I was there to pick up our kid, but of course I got cornered. Her mother stood in front of me, arms crossed, her voice dripping with disdain. "You'll never find anyone as good as her. You're throwing her away because she doesn't fit your perfect little image anymore. Shame on you." Something in me snapped. I took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "That's not why I'm leaving her. I'm leaving because she cheated on me." The room went silent. Forks froze midair. Her mother's eyes went wide, and her father's jaw clenched. "She what?" her mother asked, her voice suddenly less confident. I didn't go into details. I didn't want to. I just repeated, "She cheated. That's all you need to know." Her father looked down at his plate, and her siblings exchanged awkward glances. No one said another word to me. For the first time in months, I walked out of that house without feeling like I had to defend myself. But what I didn't realize then was that my words, as truthful as they were, had just lit a fire I couldn't control. Because now, the anger that had been aimed at me was about to turn on her. The next few days after that Sunday dinner were quiet, almost too quiet. For months, I had been dealing with passive-aggressive jabs, judgmental looks, and constant reminders that I was the shallow jerk who left his wife over her body. Now, nothing. At first, I thought maybe they were just processing what I'd said. But then I started hearing things, not from her, but from mutual friends and even my own family. Apparently, her parents had confronted her about what I told them. And not gently. From what I heard, her mother had cornered her the moment I left that night, demanding to know if it was true, pushing for every detail. And when my ex finally admitted it, That was it. The dynamic shifted instantly. The same people who had been defending her, protecting her, were now turning their anger on her. Her mother called her selfish and disrespectful. Her father told her she had destroyed her own marriage and made a fool out of the family. Her siblings stopped checking in. The supportive bubble she had been living in popped overnight. I didn't hear this directly from her. She wasn't exactly picking up my calls outside of kid-related matters, but I could tell something had changed. The next time I saw her, she looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes downcast. She barely spoke to me at all. And here's the thing, I had wanted them off my back. That was the whole reason I said anything in the first place. I didn't want them to hate her. I didn't want her to feel cornered in her own family. I just wanted to stop being blamed for something I didn't do. But now she was the one under fire. I started to feel this uncomfortable knot in my stomach. Guilt, maybe, because as much as I was hurt by what she did to me, I didn't enjoy seeing her crushed under the weight of her family's disappointment. I told myself, she made her choices. She's responsible for them. And that's true. But the part one hadn't considered was how public that fallout would be for her. Friends started taking sides. Some people who used to greet her warmly now avoided her. Even at school events for our kid, I caught whispers and side glances from other parents. One night, when I dropped off her child, she finally said something. In a low, flat voice, she asked, "Did you tell them?" I didn't pretend not to understand. I just said yes. I was tired of them treating me like I was some heartless bastard. I had to defend myself. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. No yelling, no accusations, just that small nod, like she'd expected it all along. But as I turned to leave, she said, "You didn't just defend yourself. You destroyed me." That line stuck in my head for days. Because in her mind, my truth-telling hadn't been an act of self-protection. It had been a nuclear strike. The irony? I still cared about her happiness, in some weird, conflicted way. I didn't want her as my wife anymore, but I didn't want her to be miserable either. Yet, my decision had played a role in making her life harder. And that's when I realized something I hadn't thought about before. Even when you have the moral high ground, even when you're justified, the truth can still hurt more people than you expect. By the time the dust settled, the peaceful divorce I'd hoped for was long gone. We weren't screaming at each other, but there was this heavy, permanent tension, like two people carrying different parts of the same wreckage, never looking each other in the eye. And I couldn't help wondering if I could have handled it differently. In the weeks that followed, life moved on in the technical sense. Papers were filed. Schedules were set for our child. We both kept our distance, only communicating about drop-offs, pickups, and school events. From the outside, it probably looked like two adults handling a divorce with quiet maturity. But on the inside, I was wrestling with something I couldn't quite put to rest. Had I done the right thing? When I told her family the truth, I wasn't trying to ruin her. I wasn't trying to start a war. I was just done. Done being labeled as the shallow guy who abandoned his wife because she didn't fit some fantasy. Done absorbing blame for something I didn't do. And yet, every time I saw her now, I saw the way she avoided my eyes, the way she looked smaller in her own family's presence, the way people who used to embrace her now kept their distance. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that felt vindicated. For months, I'd been carrying the weight of their judgment, and now that weight had shifted. But along with that relief came something heavier, the guilt of knowing that my decision had consequences far beyond just clearing my name. Friends asked me if I regretted it. My answer was always the same. I regret that it came to this. And I do. I regret that the woman I once loved, the woman I married, had a child with, built a life with, is now just someone I share custody with and occasionally exchange tense hellos. But I also know this. Silence would have eaten me alive. I would have spent the rest of my life carrying the lie her family believed. And maybe that's selfish, but I couldn't do it anymore. The last time we spoke outside of kid-related matters, it was short. We were standing in her driveway, the air heavy between us. She said, "You could have just told them it was complicated. You didn't have to tell them that." And I told her, "It is complicated." But I wasn't going to keep taking the blame for something I didn't do. She didn't respond. She just nodded and walked back inside. And that was that. Now, months later, I still don't know if I handled it the best way. I don't know if there even was a best way. Maybe no matter what I did, someone was going to get hurt. Maybe telling the truth wasn't the problem. Maybe it was the timing. Or maybe, in situations like ours, the truth is just another weapon. And once you use it, you can't control where the shrapnel lands. Our child is too young to understand all of this, and I hope they never have to. All they know is that mom and dad live in different houses, and both love them very much. And for now, that's enough. But late at night, when the house is quiet and there's no one around to play the right or wrong game, I find myself replaying everything in my head. The marriage we had, the drift I didn't know how to stop, the confession that shattered us, and the moment I decided to speak up. And I keep coming back to the same question. Was I just defending myself? Or was I punishing her? The answer depends on who you ask. Her family would probably say I went nuclear. My friends would say I finally stood up for myself. And me? I'm somewhere in the middle, caught between the relief of telling the truth and the guilt of watching it burn someone I once loved. So, EITA?